ready?
Yeah, sure.
So the whole notion of the California primary now really being an important part of the primaries seems like it's like the flavor of the day today. Is there something to it?
I think there's something to it on the Republican side. Certainly, with Kasich winning Ohio yesterday, he has really made it mathematically harder for Donald Trump to kind of run away with this. The trouble, of course, is that neither Ted Cruz nor John Kasich wants to drop out to actually effectively deny Donald Trump the nomination.
But if they between them and of course the Rubio delegates are still out there too. If between them they can deny him the required number of delegates to win the nomination, isn't that just as effective in some respects?
I think it is for the party elites, for sure. I don't know who it would be more effective for, Ted Cruz or John Kasich. What it does do, though, with the Rubio delegates is make them much more valuable all of a sudden. Because I think no matter who would like to be the nominee, and all three of them clearly want to be the nominee, there has to be this motion to try and not wait until California to get this done, because the Democratic side will definitely be done before June 7th.
A lot of the states coming up now are northeastern states and west coast states. Would you expect those would be states where Trump would do well? Is there a chance he could win the 1237?
I don't think he's going to win the 1237 outright, just with the remaining states, particularly because so many of them are big blue states. And so the percentages of Republicans that you have in these different districts, for example, in the state of California, the number of, Republicans in Nancy Pelosi's district in San Francisco is less than 50,000. So you're talking about relatively small numbers, and so it would be difficult for Trump, who's just hired a California campaign person, to actually mount an effective campaign against Cruz and even Kasich, who has Governor Schwarzenegger's endorsement.
So what does that mean then for the convention?
I think we're looking at a brokered convention. I just don't see any other path for the Republicans at this point.
So how does that work? Give me a little insight into that.
Well, what would end up happening, of course, is that there has to be a lot of conversation. I think that there would be this kind of uprising of Republicans who have voted for Trump if the elites are perceived or in reality effectively try to deny him the nomination if he is anywhere around 90% of the magic number.
Trump said today that there could be riots in the streets if they tried to take this away from him. If he was within say, 100 votes of winning the nomination and they brokered it in some way and took it away from him, do you think that it could get to that point?
Even with the violence at the past rallies, I don't think it would get to riots in the streets. I think that's some of the typical kind of bluster. But on the other hand, I do think that the Republicans would have very little shot of winning in November if that is, again, either the perception or the actual reality. If Republican voters feel like the person they want has been having it taken away from them, it will absolutely not work in November.
So if that scenario develops, it could literally tear the party apart, right?
I think it's true. I think there really is this kind of battle for the soul of the Republican Party. Yes, it started, kind of 40 years ago or even 50 years ago with the Civil Rights Act and kind of the Goldwater campaigns. But again, right now, we really are at kind of that crucial moment for the Republican Party. And everybody's been predicting it. And I think now we're seeing it actually happen.
So what does this mean then in terms of the California primary? How intense do you expect it will be here then in June?
I think what'll be really interesting is in Big Blue, California, we will actually see lots of Republican ads, probably for the first time in many people's memories, because it really will be competitive on the Republican side. And the way the California Republican Party allocates their delegates here, you will see them, again, those ads, in places that you wouldn't expect to actually see them, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco, because even those three delegates in that congressional district in San Francisco could mean the difference.
So what you're saying then is that Los Angeles County, let's say, with a much smaller number, or congressional districts in the county even, right? Like
Right.
inner city, where there's almost no Republicans, they get the same as districts in Orange County, where there's hundreds of thousands of Republicans, right?
Absolutely. I think those ads are going to go across, multiple different counties because of the way that our congressional districts are drawn here.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean,
It's incredible. It's incredible. And as a political scientist and a geek, you kind of have to look forward to seeing some of these ads. I used to always be jealous of the purple states, and now we'll actually get to see, how that case gets made here.
And the candidates will be, I assume, would expect them to be spending a lot of time here as well, wouldn't you?
I think you're going to see far more of the Republican I think you'll see far more of the Republican candidates for president than California has ever seen in recent memory.
What are we leaving out about this? Is there another angle or another aspect of this that is important that we should talk about?
Well, I think the other thing to always remember is that California is usually seen as just the deep pockets for both parties on some level. And so it will be really interesting to actually see which group can really work with the Republicans of California because they don't necessarily all agree. So you do have the moderates like a Governor Schwarzenegger, but you also have some very conservative Californians, particularly in the Inland Empire and elsewhere, who might be dissatisfied enough to vote for a Cruz or a Trump.
Who's best organized here to take advantage of what you were just talking about with the district scenario?
Well, right now, Cruz has been here for about a year. So he's really done some of the groundwork. And we saw how that, kind of turned into some things for him in Iowa. So I would expect him to be poised to do well. But again, Kasich also has, that kind of shoe leather campaign approach. And so the question will be whether or not he can raise enough money to actually mount an effective challenge here and also hang on through all of the primaries that happen in between now and June 7th to actually stay around.
And what about the Democrats? Do you think they might still be, let's say Hillary Clinton would still be beneath clinching at that point? What would you expect?
Well, I think with Hillary's sweep last night, it makes the math much, much more difficult for the Sanders folks. Yes, the Sanders folks are highly committed and highly engaged. And again, as a political scientist, you want people to be highly engaged no matter what candidate they support. But the math has just made it nearly impossible, particularly because on the Democratic side of those superdelegates, Sanders has not shown them enough to have a widespread kind of switch, which is what we saw in 2008.
Do you think that she could actually clinch before California to get the number of delegates?
I think she does have a good shot of clinching before California, particularly because there are big states kind of still out there that she's well poised to win. Something like New York, where she used to be a senator, is still out there. They vote on April 19th. That's 2 months before June 7th, And so again, her ability to win by 14 points in Ohio really did send a certain signal to some voters that could tip some of these later primaries.
So like you hinted before, this is kind of the ultimate irony, right? The bluest state in the country and now making the choice for the red party.
Exactly. So we'll see whether or not our California Republicans weigh in the way that maybe their neighbors might like.
Yeah. I mean, this would be like Texas making the final choice for the Democrats, right? I mean, a completely blue state. I mean, red state, right? Don't you think?
I think absolutely. And so again, there's kind of this, I think, nail biting on one level, among the Republicans, even more to, kind of let a state like California be the final arbiter of what happens in Cleveland.
It's just crazy. It is. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
No
You gotta laugh.
problem.
I mean,
You
just,
really
right?
do.
It's just nuts.
I just, I always thought that 2000 was our Y2K moment,
Yeah,
when it came to
yeah.
elections.
Yeah.
And now look,
Yeah.
yeah, you don't think it can get any crazier until it does.
And it does, right? No one could ever have predicted this, right?
No,
I mean, this is
no.
really something out of almost science fiction, I think.
And again, all of the scholars that I know are completely flummoxed.
Yeah.
They just have no framework to
Yeah.
really understand what's
Yeah.
going on.
Wow.